had conveniently begun mid-struggle, omitting the earlier altercation entirely. And even more damning, audio enhancement captured Pike muttering, "You should have stayed quiet," as Marcus backed away. Confronted with this evidence, Pike's composure shattered, and under threat of perjury charges, he confessed that he had been laundering money through the store for years with the help of a silent partner, none other than Judge Whitaker's estranged brother, Thomas Whitaker, and that a recent dispute over missing funds had led to threats and desperation, with Pike planning to stage a robbery to explain financial discrepancies, never expecting Marcus to walk in at the wrong moment. And when the plan spiraled out of control, Pike identified Marcus as the perpetrator to divert suspicion, later seeking reassurance from Judge Whitaker that the case would proceed smoothly. The revelation hit like an earthquake, and though Whitaker denied knowledge of the staged robbery, his undisclosed communications and failure to report his brother's involvement constituted serious ethical violations, prompting his immediate suspension pending investigation. Meanwhile, Chief Judge Price declared a mistrial, dismissed all charges against Marcus with prejudice due to prosecutorial reliance on tainted evidence, and referred Pike for arrest on charges including perjury, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. When Marcus was brought into the courtroom to hear the decision, he looked dazed eyes, searching for his mother and brother, and as Elena explained that he was free, truly free, Alana collapsed into tears of relief, pulling both her sons into an embrace that seemed to hold years of fear and resilience. Reporters swarmed the steps outside as Isaiah, shy now under the glare of cameras, clung to his mother's hand, and when asked why he spoke up, he simply said he didn't like how the judge looked at his brother, like he had already decided. And when he heard the argument, he remembered something his teacher had told him, that if you see something wrong, you say something, even if your voice shakes. In the weeks that followed, the story dominated national headlines, sparking debates about judicial accountability, racial bias, and the power of ordinary citizens to challenge entrenched systems. And congressional leaders cited the case while discussing reforms to ensure greater transparency in courtroom communications, while advocacy groups invited Marcus to speak about wrongful accusations and the presumption of guilt that shadows so many young black men in America. Judge Whitaker ultimately resigned before formal impeachment proceedings could conclude, his legacy tarnished. His career ended not by a seasoned attorney or investigative journalist, but by a child's insistence on truth, and Thomas Whitaker faced federal charges tied to the laundering scheme, exposing a network of corruption that extended beyond a single store, yet perhaps the most profound. Transformation occurred within the Reed family, as Marcus enrolled in community college to study criminal justice, inspired to become the kind of advocate he had needed, while Isaiah discovered a passion for law and public speaking, encouraged by teachers who saw leadership in his quiet courage. The convenience store closed, its windows boarded, a fading reminder of deception, and Fulton County implemented new policies requiring full disclosure of any contact between judges and witnesses, a small but meaningful safeguard born from scandal. On the anniversary of the trial's collapse, a community forum was held at a local church, where Elena spoke about vigilance and integrity, and when Isaiah was invited to the podium, now a year older and steadier, he looked out at the crowd and repeated the two words that had changed everything. Check chambers. Not as an accusation this time, but as a reminder that truth often hides behind closed doors and that justice demands we open them. The audience rose in applause, not just for a boy, but for the idea that courage is not measured by age or status. And as the applause echoed, Alana felt a quiet certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, her sons had already proven that even in rooms designed to silence them, their voices could still command the world to listen. Because of two words spoken by a child, two words so powerful they drained the color from a seasoned judge's face. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe and stay with this story until the very end, because what happened inside that Georgia courtroom didn't just change one verdict, it shattered a town's buried secrets and proved that sometimes the smallest voice carries the heaviest truth. The courtroom in Fulton County, Georgia was packed tighter than anyone had seen in years, reporters lining the back wall, locals filling the benches, all eyes fixed on 17-year-old Marcus Reed seated at the defense table in an ill-fitting Navy suit, wrists free but future uncertain. Accused of armed robbery and aggravated assault after a convenience store owner claimed Marcus had pulled a gun and demanded cash on a humid August night. The prosecution painted him as another statistic, another troubled black teenager from the wrong side of town, while his public defender, a tired but sharp woman named Elena Ramirez, argued that the evidence was thin, the eyewitness unreliable, and the surveillance footage inconclusive. Yet the jury looked restless, The judge Stern and Marcus's mother, Alana Reed, sat clutching a tissue in the second row beside her 8-year-old son, Isaiah, who had insisted on coming, despite everyone telling him court was no place for a child, because Isaiah had a stubborn streak and a quiet watchfulness that made adults uncomfortable, as if he saw more than he should. Judge Harold Whitaker, a silver-haired man with decades on the bench and a reputation for strict sentences, presided with controlled authority, his deep voice echoing off the wood-paneled walls as he reminded the jury of their duty and the gravity of the charges. And everything seemed to be moving predictably toward a verdict that would likely send Marcus away for years when the prosecution called its final witness, Officer Daniel Hargrove, the arresting officer, who testified that he had found Marcus 2 blocks from the store, sweating, nervous, and matching the description given by the store owner, with a handgun discovered in a nearby trash can. Elena cross-examined him carefully, pointing out the lack of fingerprints on the weapon and the absence of gunshot residue tests, but the damage felt done. And when the store owner, Mr. Leonard Pike, a respected businessman in his 60s, took the stand again to reaffirm his identification, the jurors nodded solemnly, some avoiding Marcus's gaze, and Isaiah, small in his seat, watched every face with a focus that seemed too intense for a child his age. The tension thickened as closing arguments began, the prosecutor invoking safety, community, and the need to deter crime, while Elena spoke of doubt, of rushed conclusions, of a system that too often mistook proximity for guilt. And as Judge Whitaker prepared to instruct the jury, something unexpected happened. Isaiah slipped from his seat, unnoticed at first, and walked down the aisle toward the front of the courtroom, his sneakers squeaking softly against polished floors, until he stood just behind the defense table, eyes fixed not on the jury, not on his brother, but on the judge. A murmur rippled through the room as Alana whispered sharply for him to come back, and the bailiff took a step forward. But before anyone could stop him, Isaiah spoke in a clear, steady voice that cut through the air like a blade. "Check chambers." 2 words, simple and strange, yet they hit Judge Whitaker with visible force, his expression freezing, complexion draining to an ashen pale that reporters would later describe as ghost-like. And for a long second, no one moved, no one breathed, because the judge was staring at the boy as if he had seen an apparition from his past. The bailiff reached Isaiah and gently took his shoulder, asking what he meant, but the child only repeated, softer this time, "Check chambers." Never breaking eye, contact with the bench, and Elena, sensing something seismic beneath the surface, requested a brief recess, which the judge granted in a voice that lacked its earlier authority, calling everyone to clear the courtroom except counsel. Whispers exploded as spectators filed out, reporters already texting updates, and Alana rushed to her son, demanding to know why he would risk contempt of court. But Isaiah simply said he had seen something when he went to the restroom earlier, something he thought the judge should know about. Inside chambers, away from cameras, Elena pressed Isaiah gently, and he explained that while washing his hands, he had heard 2 men arguing behind a partially open door marked private, and he had recognized one voice from television interviews, Mr. Pike, the store owner, and the other voice, though older and strained, sounded like the judge. And the words he caught chilled Elena to the bone. Pike had said, "If this comes out, we're both finished." And the judge had replied, "It won't, as long as the footage stays buried." And though a child's testimony about overheard fragments might seem flimsy, the specificity in Isaiah's recollection, the fear in Whitaker's eyes, and the timing of Pike's earlier visit to chambers before court convened painted a picture too disturbing to ignore. Elena demanded that the judge recuse himself and that the court investigate possible misconduct, citing the appearance of impropriety and potential ex parte communication. And, though Whitaker initially bristled, his hands trembled slightly as he denied any wrongdoing, yet the seed of doubt had been planted, and within an hour the courthouse buzzed with rumors, the chief judge notified, and an emergency hearing scheduled to determine whether the trial had been compromised. Outside, news vans gathered, broadcasting the extraordinary scene of a child interrupting proceedings with 2 cryptic words, and social media ignited with speculation, some praising Isaiah's bravery, others accusing the defense of theatrics. But inside a separate courtroom, under the supervision of Chief Judge Eleanor Price, a methodical and unflappable jurist, testimony was taken regarding Pike's presence in Whitaker's chambers, which he admitted, claiming it was merely to discuss scheduling concerns. Yet phone records obtained quickly by an investigative clerk revealed multiple calls between Pike and Whitaker over the previous month, none disclosed to counsel, and when pressed about the footage mentioned, Pike faltered, insisting there was no additional video beyond what had been submitted into evidence. But Elena requested a subpoena for the store's full surveillance archive, arguing that selective editing could conceal exculpatory material. As technicians retrieved the hard drive under court order, tension mounted to a breaking point. And Marcus sat in a holding room, unaware that his little brother's courage might be unraveling a carefully constructed narrative. Hours later, in a dim evidence room, the unedited footage was played, and what it revealed stunned everyone present. At the time of the alleged robbery, a second individual, face partially obscured but clearly distinct from Marcus, entered the store minutes before the confrontation, engaged in a heated exchange with Pike, and appeared to place something behind the counter before leaving through a side door. And when Marcus later entered to buy a soda, the footage showed Pike reaching for a gun. First, a struggle ensuing, and Marcus fleeing in panic without taking any money. The edited clip presented at trial had conveniently begun mid-struggle,